Hello. I found this article by accident because I was looking up images for Hellblade because I just recorded and I've just exported one which is going to come out probably tomorrow, according to today being Wednesday, and it probably comes out on Thursday. But I discovered that this article exists. And it's by Polygon, whom I personally don't believe have very good articles in the sense of being very... What's the word? I'm terrible at this whole word thing. Polygon are a very activist group. They don't often use journalism in the way of pointing out, reviewing things. They often focus on identities. They focus on identity politics. They focus on diversity and all that bullshit. The far left shit. So here's my mouse. Hello. And when you bring up the article, it starts off with this wonderfully large image of being stared at by Senua. And the game in question is actually Senua's Sacrifice. What Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, gets wrong about mental illness? This action game tries to show what psychosis is, but ends up invalidating real experiences. What in the fuck are you meant to do about that? Let's get this started. I suffer from depression. There we go. There's my identity politics right there. To experience true depression in a video game would be a completely impossible task because everyone experiences it differently. Some people, like myself, can function normally but have extremely bad days where they're still functioning, but you can't hide it. Some people can't function without medication, and they are incapable of doing things that regular people can do in some cases. And that's not great for them. But with a bit of time and a bit of effort and a bit of help, some people can get out of this thing and some people can't. In a lot of cases, a lot of these people don't get out of the darkness that they put themselves into in some cases. I'm not saying that depression is caused by oneself. There are many reasons for depression, but we all experience it very differently, like I've said. But some people can't get out of the darkness that is depression, and some people learn to live with it, and some people learn to beat it. There is no such thing as a right way of describing things like depression, psychosis, as characters in video games aren't real, and a lot of people who don't know what this experience is don't know how to add that to art. If they want to add it to art, I am welcome for them to try and do their best to get a accurate description. And in Hellblade, I believe this is a fantastic idea that they have encapsulated, made a somewhat realistic attempt at bringing up psychosis, schizophrenia, and essentially a lot of mental illnesses in one. But it's not perfect. I understand that. It's a video game, and they had to make it more game-like instead of it being just a walking simulator. And 1 second. Just gotta take a drink. Oh, wonderful. Big glass of water. I was about to start streaming before I started reading this article. I don't read articles from Polygon or Eurogamer or any of those. But unfortunately, the title got me. This is an opinion piece by them, and it's written by Dia Licina? Licina? I don't know. Would you give up the beautiful world that you and only you can see just to be rid of your nightmares? Asks Dillian. Warning, from this point onwards is going to contain spoilers, probably for myself as well. I'm sorry. So I'm just going to stop you right there. Okay, so if you don't want to get spoiled, you've gone. Okay, well, now we're going to continue. Dillion is the sole point of protagonist Senua's quest into hell. The man that Hellblade, Senua's sacrifice, sets up as the person who understands her better than anyone else has ever or had. Sets up as the person who understands her better than anyone else has or could. Her light in the darkness. And here is the invalidating point. Not only her mental illness, but her desire to seek wellness. I'm not going to do a clapback here, because I don't like clapbacks. They are unnecessary in a lot of cases. Because all it does is it just shock it when someone's clapping in your face over a subject, it usually means their argument is wrong, or their argument is weak and they have to shock value it up. It's part of a well-intentioned neurotypical statement that permeates this game, invalidating the experience of people with mental illness even as it seeks to promote understanding. Here's the problem with that. It doesn't. It's an experience of a fictional character who, in a time where mental health would have been a very, very, very non-understanding, would have basically been non-existent. Men, women, children would have experienced things that are absolutely barbaric. As she is part of a Viking / Pict / medieval, less than medieval, would have been, it's not stone, Iron Age idea of mental illness would have been usually as a thought of an oracle. Those people usually think differently. That obviously, a lot of these people wouldn't have had help. They would talk and be branded as a witch or branded as weak, useless, and often enough, I don't know what to do. They wouldn't know what to do. Senua's sacrifice begins with a warning scream about its representation of psychosis. It cautions the player who've had similar experiences to take care in playing, and provides a website, which I will bring up now, with contact information for helplines. This warning comes with a showy mention of the professionals and individuals consulted in the game's making. The whole thing is written in skeleton, serious, severe typeface, posed against a black background. The first minute of Senua's sacrifice is an odd mixture of sincerity, precariousness, and confusion. It's Grimdark 2.0, the well-meaning Grimdark with diversity, inclusion, and initiative. What does that fucking mean? So we're looking at this, and looks like this is a very good, well-meaning website. It even has different places for different country. Mine is the United Kingdom, so if you need to talk to someone, there's lots of these websites, the official. Honestly, this is a really damn good website thing to do, because say a person is going through it, they see this thing, and they've been experiencing such bad mental health issues for a long time, and they didn't know what to do. They find this, and it's like, okay, I've now got a solution to possibly my problem. And I'm not... Because a lot of the times, the first step is the hardest, being able to reach out and get help. Okay, so moving on. But it left me holding a bag full of questions. I couldn't tell if I was being pandered to, postured at, or being used. I don't know who this game was for. Perhaps I should have listened to the warning and begged Sony for a refund, citing I'm severely mentally ill and the game says I probably shouldn't play. I'd be lying if I didn't admit the cynicism crept through me like Senua's black rot. Despite it all, I never wanted to be proved wrong by a game more than I have with Hellblade. So this person, I don't know this person. Let's see if I can bring her up. A profile. Oh, wow. So this is all we know about this person. They have one post, which is this. And comments. She has no comments. So we don't know anything about this person. We don't know anything about this person's background. I do have their Twitter bio here. Let's see what it comes up with. Queer, indigenous, trans woman, freelance gaming critic, founding editor. Okay. Not going to look at that. We're going to focus on the article. Because this is the bit that needs to be important. This is the bit that needs to be talked about. The representation of mental illness in video games is fraught, often irresponsible, and fundamentally non-existent outside of indie developers. Reviewers, albeit with no stated history of psychotic mental illness, have praised Hellblade's sensitivity and sightliness. Even friends with mental illness said the game resonated with them. This was the AAA depression quest the games industry was waiting for. So, apparently you can't play this game and understand it without being mentally ill, and also, if you're mentally ill and state that this game is good, you're wrong. But if you... And then they bring up Depression Quest, a game that I refuse to play, I refuse to acknowledge as a video game because of its developer. I'm gonna do that with quotation mark. Developer. I believe it was Zoe Quinn. If I remember rightly. I'm not gonna bother looking up because it's... I know the stories behind it, and I know the fact that they got positive... Just put it this way. Five Guys is a thing with Zoe Quinn, and that's all I'm gonna say. In all fairness, this is the first instance I know of where a game studio contacted mental health professionals and people living with mental illness for its game about mental illness. It's also not set in a haunted sanctuarium with the stench of Howard Phillips Lovecraft. With nowhere, no. Bleh. It was Ninja Theory's willingness to do the work in mind and lack of apparent sanity meter. Yeah, that is a good point, actually. I'm going to give that person that. When I started up Hellblade, eager to embark on a journey through psychosis with a tortured but persistent Pictish lady. Alright. The sanity meter thing, I can understand. In a lot of the games where they use a sanity meter, they don't use it very well. There are a few exceptions to that. For example, there's an old game on the GameCube where as your sanity went down, it would start affecting the game and messing with everything, including settings. It would actually it would fake turning your TV volume down. It would pretend to crash. It would fuck with you. And that's a really good way of doing it. A lot of the times when people show psychosis, you're often seeing it from the outsider's perspective, the outside person, the other person who's perfectly fine. And I'm not going to use neurotypical. I'm going to use fine. The people who don't suffer, they're perfectly alright. And that's fine. Sometimes it's hard to show what's going on through a person's mind. If I were to make a game, it would just basically be based around my mental health. It would basically be a game where you go through your day-to-day actions, but every day sometimes it's either easier or harder. And sometimes you make choices and that affects you mentally. So when it makes it harder, you have to mash a key more than once to do something right. And it'll eventually become a key where you're just putting so much effort into doing one action that you, as a player, will give up. And that's how sometimes I feel. The research shows in the game, while playing, I saw gamut of that's a long word. Symptomology, classically associated with psychosis and was alternatively guided, taunted, and upbraided by auditory hallucinations, which the game calls the others and are credited as furies. Sensuous hallucinations, glowing runes with the colours and light are either amplified or dimmed. Her head darts furtively back and forth, scanning for the danger that hushed faraway voices, and perhaps imagined movements that might portend. Fire spontaneously erupts from buildings as sensual focus shifts between reality and another. Hypervigilance, auditory and visual hallucinations, flashbacks, agitation, intrusive thoughts and delusions, all the classic hallmarks of psychosis are brought to bear in Hellblade. I made my way through the beautifully crafted, decrepit Viking landscape of wooden villages, sacrificed corpses, and smoky black Viking demons. What I'd come to learn that were manifestations of the trauma Senua experienced shortly before the game began. In this particular psychotic episode is fueled by two triggering events. The slaughter of her village and lover, I'm going to say, Dillion, and the stories that a mentally ill mystic, Daruth, has told her about the Norsemen. Daruth can sometimes act as a guide, but his primary purpose is to inject Norse mythology into the game. I found myself largely ignoring these moments because they had little bearing on Senua's present realities. Actually, it's giving you a lot more context in what's happening in the game. And also, Furies, if I remember rightly, we'll Google that right now. Furies. Furies were the three goddesses of vengeance. It's Greek. I might be... Norse? Furies, Norse mythology. Okay. Looks like I didn't find it. It might be related to a Greek thing, but a lot of things were derivative of all... not to sound like a massive globalist, but a lot of things that all cultures have discovered and made their own come from everything else. So there are dragons in almost every culture. There are demons in almost every culture. A lot of places made their own versions of pyramids, and they look very similar because of structural thoughts. They discovered that it was a good structure, therefore let's make a big one. But they each made them their own. They each made them their defining traits in their own image, rather than going, oh, we've just copied the Aztecs and we're Mayan. Oh, we've just copied this culture because why not? And it's not, we don't have culture. I'm looking at USAS. Her realities are more outwardly presented via Hellblade's puzzles, which in using her aspect of mental illness to see things differently. They're about finding a connection and patterns that where none really exist. It's a creative psychological process called pareidolia. Apologize, I'm not very good at English, even though it's my main language. I've always struggled with reading and in some cases, and reading out loud. And it's something we all engage in. It's believed that people with psychosis are more adept at this kind of creative process and involuntarily engage in it more frequently. This pareidolia is a thing where we see faces in random things. So we see a face in a wall where there isn't actually a face, but we see basically the two dots and like a line that would represent a face, because all you need to know that a face is there are two eyes and a mouth. And we see shape. It's the thing we do when we look at clouds and see a shape. That's that thing. It's a really interesting subject. And let's continue. Perhaps it's true I spent hours struggling to solve environment puzzles in this game, seeing specific rune shapes everywhere. I turned and matched it up perfectly, only for the game to conclude it wasn't the specific shape I needed. My partner, who is also mentally ill, would point out others I'd missed, and always to the same negative results. Were we making connections that simply didn't exist, or was this a deliberate act by the designers? We'll likely never know. The game doesn't address what the puzzles consider fraudulent semiotic connections. If it's deliberate attempt to mimic the periodical word, seeing the things, faces and things, capabilities of someone with psychosis for a neurotypical audience, it's not communicated. Like with many other puzzles in Hellblade, it felt like I was being deliberately undermined, and that my own mental illness was being explained to me by an inexperienced outsider. Having to embrace Senua's reality as Ninja Theory's puzzles demanded meant having to give up my lived experience as a mental ill person to occupy a perspective that felt inauthentic. How fucking dare you? Are you basically saying that Ninja Theory looked directly at you and said, yeah, your experience doesn't matter? Your partner's experience didn't matter. I struggle with puzzles myself. I found some of the puzzles a little bit on the difficult side. But I persisted. There was a lot of obvious clues. Whenever you are very close to a puzzle or you're within the space that would give you the solve, you would see the shapes appear, the shapes that you are trying to find. And if you did not get that, if you didn't understand it, they used different cues depending on the different area. And sorry, spoilers. With the Master of Illusions guy, you had to use sound to help run things down. You had to listen carefully to what his droning was, to his symbols. And then you still had to do the whole symbol thing, but it still came up with, you'd see these red scratchy symbols like appear around Senua, and they would show that you're very close to solving it. And then that very faint thing would turn up if you're facing the right direction, that the face symbol. And to me, that was a really good way of doing it. It's a way that makes you look at the environment. It forces you to, for one thing, appreciate the environment and appreciate the design. If it just said, follow this line, the puzzle is solved, that's shit. And it looks like this person, Dia, has followed the same path that I did. The second zone I went to after defeating the Fire God was home to Valraven, a trickster deity whose area is a forest or labyrinth of dead ends that aren't actually dead ends. The puzzles here involved getting to vantage points, realigning Senua's perspective of the space to uncover the passageways that were all along. Oh no, this is the one that I did the Fire God second. She queer. I don't fucking know. This person has done the Fire God first. And I thought this was a really good puzzle because it took the mirror. It's a false mirror kind of creature. So you'd see the world through your perspective, and then you'd walk through a mirror and you'd see another perspective all of a sudden. So there was a bridge not there. There was a wall gone. A wall has disappeared from the perspective. It's a changing thing, and it was really good. I'm going to have to continue this. The puzzles here involved getting to vantage points. I stopped and wondered how many times in my own life my mental illness has aided me. Where are we going? No intrusive thought has ever saved me from harm or given me direction. Visual hallucinations have only been horrifying or mundane flashbacks that have never offered profound insight. Perhaps my hypervigilance has kept me from danger. It's also made me lash out at perceived or but unrealized threats. I'm not even disassociating through the process of writing this article that I would have at least removed me from the anxieties of writing. I'm certain my mental illnesses have never befitted me or society. Acclaim Ninja Theory as co-founder of 10 minutes muses at the end of the documentary feature, including Hellblade, which I've not watched yet. I'm not some mystical aberration helping the world progress. I'm just a girl trying to live as best I can. And that's fine. That's not what the game is doing, though. The game is using this psychosis that Senua as a driving point in the game. The combat would be a lot harder if the voices didn't tell me the person's about to swing behind me by whispering in my ears. It brings all of these factors together and uses it and gamifies it. Now, when I say gamify, I doesn't mean that it forces a real thing and puts it into a game. it makes it more accessible for everyone to understand what this character is going through specifically. It's not saying that you, yourself, your experience is invalid because you don't experience it exactly the same. Like I mentioned much earlier, including my own illness, is that everyone experiences it much differently, and it's quite narcissistic of you to believe that it was made directly just for you. Senua's journey. Oh, wait. And then it was where I began to realize that just how this game invalidates the experiences of people with mental illness at nearly every turn. What the game isn't all about fucking you. It's about Senua. How is it that hard to understand? I'm just going to quickly... I mean, playing through the Hellblade was torturous. I managed parts of the chapters before having to abandon it for a walk around the block. Many reviewers, while praising the game, used the words like tense, stressful to describe it. For me, it felt... A game felt like Dark Souls. Hang on. I'm going to walk away from this article for a second. Dark Souls! Why Dark Souls? Dark Souls is a completely different game. The Soulsborne games, the Sekiro, everything about those games is different. Yes, it may be fucking stressful, but it is not a game about mental illness. Ah! I'm coming back. For me, it was a game like Dark Souls, so tense and stressful. The game is tense, the game is stressful. There are times in Hellblade that I need to walk away from the game. There are times that in the game I felt like shit. I'm still playing the game, but I am pacing myself, making sure that I am safe. And even in my videos, I do ask people to pace themselves. I do ask people to make sure that they get help if they need it. I screamed, I shouted, I went through a series of symptoms, disassociation, derealization, panic attacks, acute hypervigilance, unshakable feelings of dread. And? I watched as the black rot crept up Senua's arm as I died repetitively, getting hung up on bad geometry. All of which brings me to what was initially the most controversial aspect of this game for many reviewers. Death. Or rather, permadeath. Right, the permadeath system, I've not experienced it. Really. But it's a cool system. It forces you to play carefully. There are loads of ways to survive in a fight, and it gives you a lot of chances. So once you go down once, you don't instantly go down. You have to rapidly tap the dodge button to make sure you're not permanently dead. I don't know if it has a limit because... actually, it does have a limit. I don't know how many times it is because in a couple of times I've struggled with a couple of the fights until I got really better at the game. And if you're struggling with the combat, I recommend that you turn down the difficulty. Or get good. In early set-piece moments, Senua falls to the battle an endless horde of spooky Vikings. It's unavoidable. The game needs you to die so it can introduce the concept of permadeath. Senua will die on her quest repetitively. Those deaths only do one thing: spread the darkness eating away at Senua. Eventually, the darkness will grow from her hand to her head and she will be lost forever. Many people with mental illness struggle with feelings of dying, fearing their next bad experience will end them, even launching into a suicidal ideation and actions. Ideation? Yeah. In Hellblade, this is a bad metaphor, handled poorly. No? No. I thought this was handled quite well. It gives you a sense of dread. You can't die. This is also a flat-out lie. There's no permadeath. You will see the black rock crawl up Senua's arm, but it resets every time. It's a deliberate move by Ninja Theory to artificially increase tension. Yeah, it's what developers do. To raise the stakes in a game or in love with its psychological horrors, manipulations are common media, but this feels wrong. So this person seems to have an issue with the permadeath system, which apparently doesn't exist. I have a feeling I've not experienced the permadeath system. I might force myself to experience the permadeath system once I've finished the game to see what it does. But I'm going to have to go on this person's word a little bit, and it says there is no permadeath, it's just a lie. And I'm thinking it might take you back a really far point, or it might take you back to the start. But permadeath is often not used well in some games, and permadeath is weird. When I say permadeath, I mean permanently killed off in the entire thing, and you have to start from the beginning. There are a couple of games which do that. So Doom introduced an Ultra Nightmare mode where you only have one life in the entire game. And if you die, you start from the beginning. No save or anything. You can't do that. It will wipe your save and you have to start from the beginning. And that is an intense and insane idea, but people have done it. In some ways, I feel for Ninja Theory attempting to construct a sensitive lesson plan for a neurotypical audience about mental illness is difficult. Oh, I read that all as one sentence. A less cynical version of me wants to applaud the development team for trying to make a compelling didactic game? Whatever. Their depiction of the auditory and the visual aspects of mental illness are solid in many ways. Even if impressionistic. Hellblade comes from showing how trauma can impact and diet episodes of severe mental illness. Still, in my most genial of moods, I can't help feeling but it helps more than it possibly helps. Right. No, bringing autism in this. Right. I'm going to stop reading this because, honestly, this person, quite frankly, doesn't know what she's talking about. In my opinion. This person, while I have to take their word on this, experiences a lot of the issues that Hellblade does, Senua does in Hellblade. I believe that her experiences, she's trying to make her experience the default experience as her problem. By the looks of it, she can actually play the game to a degree, but she struggles with the basics of combat. I discovered very quickly that you can ricochet by dying. Ricochet? Repel? Reflect? The lot of what this person is saying is that because I didn't enjoy the game, I feel that this invalidates all mentally ill people. And I could tell you otherwise, that it doesn't invalidate. It tries to bring to light. It's not totally successful, but it does do its best to try and bring the whole mental illness to life. And honestly, it is one of the best depictions I've seen in a long time. And to try and use that and to it creates a very basic but very good story. And I'm not even finished. I am drawn in by the story, but I can't play for long periods because of its intensity. And I'm using intensity for a good reason, because the game uses it very strong images. It uses strong... I don't like the whispering in the game. I don't like it when Senua looks directly at me, because it makes me feel uncomfortable. And that's the fucking idea. When you are uncomfortable in the game, it's doing its job. It's not a game meant to make you feel good. It's a game to make you feel uncomfortable while you travel through this nightmare land of a Norse mythology depiction. The creatures you fight are almost human, but they seem to have no facial human features. Monstrous features. The bosses, they have humanoid forms. They are incredibly imposing. But they bring out the worst in Senua. They bring out her mind fighting her at every step as she walks to the path to hell itself. Hell, as in the Norse hell, not the Christian hell. There's no Hell is a place you don't want to go for the Norse, because in hell you've died in a terrible way. In a lot of cases, you've been murdered. You've died in your bed. You are the betrayer of people. You are a liar. You are awful. You do not deserve to go to Valhalla because you have done all these things or have experienced these things. A lot of people want to die in battle to get to Valhalla. But in hell, you are cold, you are hungry, you suffer at all times. That is not a happy-go-lucky story that you want to experience when going to hell. You are going there to suffer. In this game, Senua isn't even in hell yet as far as I am, and she is suffering from her own mind, fighting her, berating her with voices that bringing her down, making her experience these horrific memories and torturous feelings that she's going through all the time. And then these small voices of hope and help seep through every now and then. That is Hellblade. That is Senua's sacrifice. She is sacrificing her mind, her body, her soul to try and save her beloved. And you've not fucking got that. I understand it's a hero's journey, but it's difficult to make a story like this not into a hero's journey, because it's a really good and easy basic story to build upon. And I am very passionate about these things. I'm trying not to be, but I can't help myself. So, with that, I believe that my patron has been sated. I believe that my talking points, my discussions, have been pointed out by myself and my opinions. But since it's been stated, just before I end this video, I would like to point out that you should, if you feel that you need to help, actual help, go get help. Even if it's talking to someone who understands, speaking to a doctor, even just making a call to the Samaritans or any of the phone numbers like the suicide hotline and all that, and you feel like you need to talk to someone like that, do it, please. I am asking you as a friend. Even though we may not know each other, I consider you my friend. Please. But with that, I will talk to you another day. I am the Opinion Warlock, and you've just heard my opinion.